So see, this is your anthropology, right? So we have archaeological anthropology, cultural anthropology, or social cultural anthropology, biological anthropology, and linguistic anthropology. See, I'm going to club both of these. Okay, approach are very, very kind of similar. Okay, very, very similar, and I'll tell you why exactly as well. Okay, what are the tips for your biological anthropology? And we'll start with this archaeology. Okay, and along with archaeology, I will also include your fossils. Okay, because it is part of it. Archaeology basically. So in our syllabus, it's like your 1.5 is your primates, 1.6. So here I'll keep your primates. Okay, I will also keep your fossils. Okay, and I'll also keep your archaeology. Okay, and I'll give you specific tips on what you can sort of like tweak, not exactly tweak, what are the sort of refinements that you could possibly want to do right now. Okay, biological anthropology as well, and so on and so forth. So we'll take a look at each one by one. Okay, right. So say biological anthropology. Okay, biological anthropology, right? Biological anthropology. So one of the most important tips that I can tell you is that you have to make the paper look more, and let's here, and I cannot emphasize this enough. Okay, let's go here. Okay, it is still an anthropology paper, right? It's still an anthropology paper. Okay, not a biology paper. And so let's take a look at some of the questions. Okay, so for instance, if I give you a question, okay, let's just assume, okay, and I don't think that these are the kind of questions that are going to be there in your paper. Let's say mitosis, mitosis, and meiosis. Okay, or let's say protein synthesis. Okay, or DNA replication. Okay, and if you guys can think of any other hardcore bio topics, okay, which is you might have found a little difficult to sort of connect it to anthropology, right? Because these are all topics from your chapter number 1 point what is it, right? It is basically the basics of bio. So even if you have questions like this, the emphasis here is that you talk a little about the bio, talk a little bit about the bio here, talk a little bit about the bio, but you then connect it back to humans. Connect it back to the humans. Connect it to the humans. Okay, so what element? So it is a so what element. So what element? So for instance, if I tell you, so mitosis and meiosis, so you're probably going to talk about two different kinds of cell division, right? And then you're going to talk about mitosis is essentially like creating two different two daughter cells of the same type, right? And meiosis is basically going to be more from sperm production and egg production. Okay, haploid, diploid, all of those sort of things that you'll probably talk about, right? So you'll probably do this, but instead of essentially focusing on interphase and prophase and metaphase and anaphase and telophase, cytokinesis and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth for your meiosis as well, and that too the round goes twice. Make a very, very simple sort of a diagram. So for instance, mitosis, okay, you could probably just talk about it like this: 2n, okay, makes it 2n and then 2n, right? Rather than interphase, prophase, metaphase, okay, anaphase, okay, telophase, cytokinesis. I hope you're getting the point. Okay, so with this, it becomes very difficult to sort of like craft an answer where you're talking more about the so what sort of an element. So for instance, if I'm talking about meiosis, if meiosis goes wrong, okay, the focus on, so rather than focusing here, so I'd say this, focus on non-disjunction. What happens if meiosis doesn't happen right? Okay, so talk about how you get an XO or XXY. These sort of elements would be better sort of a connect to anthro, right? So this essentially, when you talk about these sort of elements, that becomes more anthropology, right? So try to connect. Okay, so you have so I hope you understand the difference between these two, right? So rather than focusing only on the biology, you have to focus on this. So in fact, like, the same sort of a question could also be there in your bio paper. Okay, so, there is an optional for, life sciences, right? So you have there and you have medicine. So even if they have it, and when you have the same sort of a question, doesn't necessarily matter. The focus should be that you cater to anthropology paper, they cater to medicine sort of paper, and somebody else caters to life sciences, and so on and so forth. So that is sort of an important sort of an element that I would say. So keep your paper to be more biological anthro and less bio. Okay, now you might ask, to what extent should you have bio? So let's say there's a question about any of these things. So I would say that, at least by the first page. So let's say here, okay, even if you have something like this, at least from here, okay, talk about the anthro part. Okay, and I'm just saying this is the bio. Use the first page almost all the way here to keep the bio, but at least here in the very first page you start connecting it to elements of what is, how you're connecting. And so in anthropology, I'll give you some tips. You can probably talk about the significance of the concept, significance, how it is relevant, what are the applications, some case studies. These things could probably add a little more value, okay, than the hardcore biology. And I'm telling you this from experience. Generally, I have this thing that by the time I get into the biology, and I understand, and I love biology, right? So because of this thing, I tend to have there is you start with a cell, and inside that you have a nucleus, and inside the nucleus you basically have your chromosomes. You'll have a chromosomes, then you'll stretch out the chromosome, you'll draw the DNA. In the DNA you will sort of expand that, and you end up getting your A, T, C, Gs, and the 5' to 3' and 3' to 5'. So if you just have a DNA, that is fine, but you should not have a deoxyribose and the molecular structure, the chemical structure for your adenine, guanine, and thymine and cytosine, right? We've made those mistakes as well, right? So better to focus on these sort of elements, right? So even if bio is your strength, focus on connecting that biology to all of these things and make this as your strength. Okay, I've noticed a lot of people who are doing really well in paper one, and especially in recent year, for instance, last year, 150 plus kind of scores, have focused a lot more on these sort of elements. Okay, these sort of elements. I have actually, in fact, like when I go through their papers, it takes me a while to understand it's a biology paper and, not some other sort of a paper, right? Because it is the same sort of format that they write every other sort of paper as well. But the focus more so on significance and relevance and applications and disadvantages, advantages, and, these sort of aspects. So these could be the kind of dimension that you would have, rather than going and getting stuck in the hardcore bio, but not talking about this thing could be a problem, right? Is that clear? Okay, so I hope this is sort of helpful here.